Tonight we sit down to speak with Jen Lewis, a Korean-American woman, and her story of moving from Korea to the United States as part of a military family, and how that experience has shaped her perceptions of culture and race in America.
Hi, I'm Elodie.
And I'm Jeremy, and this is Jen Lewis.
Hey, what's up?
Let's talk.
My skin is gold. My skin is gold. My skin is gold.
Jen, thank you so much for being here with us and being here to have a conversation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, my name's Jennifer Lewis. You guys know that.
Married to Mitch.
Mitch Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
Scott Lewis's brother.
Oh, okay.
There
You
go.
might know Scott. I have 3 kids. Alicia, 22 years old. Spencer, 20. And Kayla, 18.
Wow.
I know.
Spencer's 20. Wow.
Dude,
That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
Half Korean. My mom is Korean. Was Korean. They're both passed away. Military brat. So grew up in Korea all through elementary school. Went
What
to
part of Korea?
Seoul.
Seoul, okay.
Yep. At Yongsan.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Big base. Big army base. And then moved to Alabama because my dad went to Fort Rucker.
Got it.
And then kind of stayed there. I was lucky because we didn't have to move around. So
Yeah. How old were you when you moved from Seoul to Alabama?
13.
13.
Yeah. I had never, I was born in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd only been there for 6 months before
Okay.
we moved to Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I didn't have any kind of idea of what the
Yeah.
U.S. was.
Yeah.
And, you
Yeah.
know, I was rooting for the Patriots all the time because I thought it was America's football team.
Ah!
Yeah. I was like, it's the Patriots.
Yeah,
you know,
patriotic.
Unless
yeah.
you're from
Yeah, yeah.
Seattle.
I know. Yeah.
it's
I learned
Seahawks.
real quick after I moved
Yeah.
to Seattle. But,
Yeah.
so,
How
yeah.
was that transitioning from being in the Army and being on base and stuff, and then moving to Alabama and as a teenager? How was that for you?
It was horrible. It was a huge learning curve for me. Growing up in the military, there's it's really diverse, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Everyone gets along with everybody. It's cool.
Yeah.
Moving to Alabama in 7th grade was pretty traumatic for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kids tease me all the time.
Why?
Because of the way I dressed, because of the way I talked, because of the way I looked.
Mhm.
It was everything, everything about me.
Huh.
And yeah, it was really tough because we'd go out in public,
Mhm.
as you know, down in the South, everyone's really friendly, right?
Yeah.
Super friendly.
Mhm.
I'd go out with my dad and be like, hey, Jen. And I'd be like, oh, she's so mean to me at school. And my dad's like, but they're so nice to your face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you're standing
You're right
right
there.
next to me.
Yeah, what are they gonna
so
do?
Wow.
What
Yeah.
are they gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had kids spit on me down there.
Oh
and,
my gosh.
push me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was not a fun experience
Yeah.
for me. I wanted to get out of there so badly. So, it's funny because they're like, "Where are you going to college at?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to Washington."
That's far away. Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
can.
Where do you go to college?
PLU.
PLU, okay.
Okay.
Down in
Yeah.
Tacoma.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I liked the brochure. Because I'd
Of
never been
course.
there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, ooh, cherry blossoms.
Mhm.
Yeah,
and,
Tacoma's awesome.
Right? And you get here.
I didn't know.
It is now.
Oh, it wasn't then. I'm
Yeah.
like, Parkland. I'm like, oh, I'm going to Parkland. And they're like, oh, wow,
Ooh.
Jen, do you know?
Whoa.
Yeah.
I know. And I'm like, what? I'm
Yeah.
like, the campus looks so pretty. And it's like, okay, yeah, well.
So when you were going through all that in elementary school and in middle school and stuff like that,
Yep.
Are you an only child? Did you have a sibling to go along with it and share that with, or was it just you?
I had a younger sister. She's about 5 years younger than me. And it's funny, the dynamic. So she, when we moved to Alabama, became a cheerleader.
Mhm.
No.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Was allowed to wear makeup because she was a cheerleader. I
Right.
was not allowed to wear makeup
Because you weren't.
because I was not a cheerleader. I had to wait till I was 18.
Oh my
Got it.
goodness.
Right.
Mhm.
Couldn't
Makes
wear
sense.
makeup, couldn't date till I was 18, but she could do anything she wanted because she was a cheerleader. Right? But she was really popular. She, it's weird because we both have such a different experience.
Yeah.
And, she wore blue contacts. That's what she was a cheerleader.
Yeah.
And I got to be known as Leanne's sister, which was awesome.
Especially
but-
the older sister.
Yeah, exactly. But no, she didn't really experience any of the stuff that I did, which is crazy to me,
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was because she was younger and she grew up with these people versus
Yeah.
me, who was kind of like
already established.
yeah,
kind of,
like I kind of jumped into it, and
yeah.
and it was tough. Like I know, like even my daughter was experiencing issues when she got into middle school, but I was able to understand like that feeling of, it's okay, like
Right.
it's tough right now, but it's gonna get better.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it's not gonna be this way forever.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
talk. Find someone you can talk to, and I think it was easier because so we go to church, and it was just good to have that kind of community,
Sure.
especially with the kids, like having other people that they could talk to or be around.
So Jen, you alluded to this a little bit already, but growing up, was it when you went to Alabama, or did you experience in Korea started really feeling like I'm different? Because you're mixed.
Right.
And I know in some Asian cultures, or just in general, being mixed is not the best thing.
Right.
And so when did you really start to feel that you were different than the people that were around you? I mean, you've lived in
Yeah.
a couple
Yeah.
pretty homogenous communities.
Extreme. I would have to say it's when I moved to Alabama.
Okay.
I think, and it's weird, I think my parents really protected me in Korea. I mean, I had a group of friends. It was pretty diverse. But even like you said, like in Korea, like it was later when we revisited Korea,
Yeah.
like people would be mean to me because I was American, right? And so it wasn't so much of a race as it was where I was from.
Right.
Yeah.
And then until I spoke Korean to them, then it was like, oh,
Okay.
hey,
Yeah.
you know Korean?
Yeah.
Oh,
You fit
hey.
right in.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
welcome.
Mm-hmm.
But in Alabama, it was one of those things where, like I mentioned, like a kid had spit on me at the playground. And at first I was like, dude, he's mean. Like, he's a mean boy, And then in homeroom, I'll never forget, like, this one boy was always in my homeroom, right? And he turned around and started making these, like, he's like, ching, chong, ching, like making these.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, if you can't even speak the language, like, don't try,
Yeah.
But it was when I kind of realized, like, okay, like, I think people think I'm different because I'm Korean, And it was
Yeah.
like, I think for me it was just so weird because I'd never thought of myself as different in that way.
Right. Right.
Because I had grown up in such a diverse area with a lot of different friends from all over.
Yeah.
And so that was really tough.
Yeah.
Like, that was probably the moment where I was just like, this
Yeah.
place is not good.
Yeah, I think for me, I had something similar to that, being from the Ivory Coast and moving here when I was 9. I remember when we went back, and it was all of us, my parents and the boys, and my dad and I had gone to the market, and when you look at me, like the way I dress and stuff, people assumed that I was just, American, just coming to visit, like a tourist or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I would open my mouth and then be like, oh, and then that would click like, oh, okay, and stuff. Or they would ask me, even before I opened my mouth, like, oh, you're American, huh? And I was like, in French, no, I was born here, and stuff. And so it's that, like, first thing they see, they just assume,
Yeah.
until you open your mouth and,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So, yeah, definitely.
So in your experience, and how did you navigate that? You're a military daughter. I mean, your father's a patriot, right? And served his country.
Right.
Your mother served the country as well, even though
Right.
she's Korean, by
Right.
being a wife of a military person. How did you navigate that, knowing my father is in the military, I'm a military kid, and I'm in America, and you're having to navigate that in Alabama. How did you do that?
It's crazy, but like I just kind of hunkered down, you know. It was like, okay, I just got to get through high school, and then I'm going to go to college, right?
Yeah.
I went to church down there too, and it was funny. It was a very charismatic church. So I went to church because I love God, right? And I wanted to learn more about him. And it's one of those things where I know that the people were nice to me while I was there, right? But you always know, when people talk about you, you know it always gets back to you,
Of
right?
course.
So it's like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff would always happen.
Yeah.
And so it was like I kind of had to steel myself and just, you know, I was a homebody, didn't like to do much because I just
Yeah.
didn't want to, like I didn't want to expose myself to getting
Yeah.
hurt more.
Right.
And so I kind of sheltered myself, like, you
Yeah.
know, I did. I just sheltered myself and stayed home and
Yeah.
went to school and went to church, and then
Yeah.
that's
So
it.
how did you what would you like people to learn from that?
I think it's just really kind of listening and getting to know people for who they are.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are afraid to ask questions, and almost like you kind of have to open up your heart to really wanting to be there with that person when they're talking to you.
Yeah.
And so it's that, you know, just being in the moment and listening to people and really wanting to be there with that person. Because how I grew up, won't get emotional, but my hope was always to treat other people like I would want to be treated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because I was
Amen.
so hurt
Yeah.
growing
Yeah.
up, and sometimes it's tough. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those tough things where,
Yeah.
you know, it's not easy being loving sometimes, but knowing that you just don't know what people are going through,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah, yeah, and it can be as simple as, I know for me, you know, you talked about you can kind of tell, like, if they're asking just to, like, check it off,
Right.
or if they're really wanting to know. And I know for me, it can be as simple as, wow, like, with everything going on, like, I've been watching the news, how are you doing, you know, and just, it's the tone, too, you know, and stuff, and so I think that, for me,
yeah.
makes a huge difference,
Yeah.
and it lets me, like, see that, wow, they really care.
Wow.
And it
Yeah.
also lets my guard down too, to, like, actually
Right.
tell them how I feel, instead of just oh yeah, I'm doing okay, you know, but it's
Yeah.
like, bleh, you know, kind
Yeah,
of thing, and
just
stuff
being
like that.
open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I know that's tough to share, and
Yeah.
I mean, it touches me, so I appreciate it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you having that conversation,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah,
really
yeah.
helps me out a lot.
Yeah,
You know, you've talked about being in the professional world. You're in the tech industry, male-dominated profession in many ways still, even
Yeah.
though we see more and more women getting into it. And you work in government.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about how's that been for you? Do you experience similar things, or tell us a little bit about that.
It's funny because you say it's a male-dominated industry, right? But so I work for the Port of Seattle, and it goes above and beyond in wanting to be diverse because it's a government agency.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not only that, so I am also in HR, so I do data and tech stuff in HR, which is, of course, even more like
Smaller.
accepting.
Yeah.
And we actually only have, I want to say 3 or 4 males in the whole department of like 50.
Well, that's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
even within that, it's so many different ethnicities.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been one of those things where I haven't really felt anything about, feeling different or anything like that.
Great.
If anything, I think it was hard for me to understand at first.
Yeah.
Have you always been in tech? Have you always been in government in that, or is it you moved
That's
around?
funny. No, I actually started as a consultant for my father-in-law who worked for the Port of Seattle,
Oh,
Okay.
and then became an employee about 16 years ago.
okay.
Okay.
And so I was in safety at the beginning and then
Mhm.
moved into HR. But
So then, even in the beginning, did you feel like as a woman, were there still some hoops that you had to jump through based on your gender or anything like that? Like, how was that intro into that business? And stuff?
yeah, it was actually really smooth. Like it was a great experience for me.
Mhm.
You know, I think
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had a female boss, you know, who
Mhm.
was super supportive. Like she was like, every year in my review, she put in there to be more assertive.
Mm.
And I'm like, how are you going to grade me on that? You know? And
Yeah.
she goes, Jen, I want you to speak up more. Your opinion matters. Like
Yeah.
we want to hear
Absolutely.
what you think,
That's
right?
awesome.
Yeah.
And for, you know, I was like 19, 20 when I first started working there, and it was one of those things. I was like, oh, jeez, oh, you want me to talk? Oh, you know, but it was so different and refreshing to have that.
That support and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Over the years, like she retired a couple of years ago, but I attribute my success as a professional
Yeah.
to her pushing me to
Yeah.
want to be more vocal and assertive and,
That's
and
awesome.
in a good way, you know,
Yeah.
like my opinion mattered.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, I think for me, I kind of have that similar situation too. You know, like starting off with like Quiznos and all that, but then my job in the Boys and Girls Club,
Yeah.
I have that same thing too. It's a predominantly like women that are in it, and my boss was the same thing too. Like super supportive, and she really saw something in me that I didn't see.
Yeah.
And I definitely attribute where I am now in the company because of her. And she still checks in on me even after the murder, even after the whole like George Floyd thing. She reached out and was like, "Hey, I know you.
Oh,
I know how you handle things. So how are you doing?
Mm.
You know?" And that just meant the world to me.
Mm.
yeah.
And
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, it definitely makes a huge difference. You
Yeah.
know, when you feel like you have someone in your corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, for that.
You know, earlier you also talked about being a person of faith. So you went to church a lot in your life. You still do today.
Right?
You know, in the church, you've experienced different things growing up. How has the experience as an adult been for you, being part of the Christian community?
It's funny. I think it's been really good. I think for me, again, the skills that I've learned in my professional life to be more assertive have really helped, because there have been times where, you know, so we're the church, right? Like we
Yeah.
make up the church.
Right.
And I think sometimes there's a fear of wanting to speak out or speak up. And it got, you know, I would get, you know, confused. Okay, so what are we doing this week? What's coming up?
Right.
And finally I was like, hey, is it okay if I kind of help
on
do the
that?
communications? Because
That's like Elodie.
I'll take on this.
I
got
know, like,
this.
I'm like, I love doing that. Like,
Yeah.
that's, you know, I love being able to help in that way.
So without that skill set that you learned, the assertiveness and being assertive, do you think you would have had as much success, or do you think that's benefited you in something that other people definitely need, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where you were as a kid, kind of that wallflower homebody, and you broke out of that. I mean, how can we help other people with that may have found themselves in the same circumstances you grew up in?
I think just to be there to support them and to encourage them. I think because some people get so beat down when they're young,
Yeah.
it's hard to really value who you are even as a person. And so just to kind of be
Can
that
you elaborate
support.
on that a little bit? Value who you are as a person?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'll try not to get emotional, but I think for me, being told I was stupid growing up, or, you know, just not of value, you know, to like society, right?
Right.
It's tough overcoming that. That will stay with you for a long time.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel God kind of led my husband Mitch to me, because he would actually get upset when I wasn't assertive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he goes, make a choice, Jen. And I'm like, I don't care, whatever you want, you know, like, I don't know. I know, I'm like, I don't know, you know. And, but I think, because of him, I kind of, okay, like, I can't, you know, it went back to I can be loved, right?
Yeah.
And I think because I didn't know God's love at that point, like, I went to church growing up, but it wasn't a personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
And then when we both started going to church and we got baptized, I recognized that, oh, God loves me too, like, you know, and even my friends were just super accepting of me.
Yeah.
And wanting to know who I was and valuing my opinion, you know. And so I think with all that, you know, with the support that I got, with the love that I felt, and then my boss telling me to be more assertive,
Right.
you know, it was
Like
kind of
a
just
whole
this,
package.
yeah, it was this
Yeah.
whole package of, okay, this is who I am. And it's not being assertive like, dude, you got to do it this way, you know. It's
Right.
like really kind of, okay, what do you think about this? Like,
Using your voice,
Yeah.
speaking up for yourself.
Yeah.
How can we help people develop that?
I don't know. I think just
Through encouragement or
I think it's encouraging them. It's also listening to them. That excitement and encouragement and support,
Yeah.
I think, is really important.
It's like when you tell someone something like, "Oh, I'll pray for you," and then you know, can sometimes forget. But it's like,
Yep.
"Oh, you know what? Let's just do it now," kind
Yep.
of thing. So it's like bringing them along with you,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it because a lot of people may not know about me. I was bullied a lot as a kid.
What?
Oh yeah, and I'd get chased home from school, and so growing up, going into high school and stuff, I became more of the anarchist. I was in the punk scene. I was anti everything.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way I could separate myself from that, right? So that whole idea of self-worth, and I think it's really important. That's why I wanted you to elaborate on it, because I think if we can help people touch that in themselves, that you are valuable, you are important, your opinions matter, I think it can really help make us better as a society, make us better as a community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And really understanding where other people
Yeah.
are, but helping them along. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And then even going off of his thing about making, you know, bettering our community and stuff like that, what would you say, you know, in the Christian community, what is it that you think needs to happen to bring hope and to bring reconciliation back, especially in the times of racial injustice and just everything like that? Like, what is your hope?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
a super great question. I think it's one of those things that never really gets talked about. And I think it's listening and really listening with your heart and opening up your mind. I think even for me, talking through everything, like after George Floyd, the video came out, and I couldn't understand. Like I didn't understand how that could even happen, right? And Mitch was like, it's because you can see it now.
Yeah.
Like you've heard about stuff, but you can see it. And
it's in your face.
you can't look away from it.
Yeah.
And I think it's having those conversations, whether they're going to be easy or hard. It's being okay with knowing that in a Christian community, we're supposed to be honest and open with each other, right? And so if someone, I will ask a sister, like a friend, and say, hey, is it okay to say black? Should I, because they're not from Africa, and so it's like one of those things where it's like, I know I'm ignorant in a lot of things, right? And thinking that I know what racism is because I'm half Korean and I've experienced racism is so ignorant of me, to think that I understand, like we had this event at church. It's called a lament. And people shared their stories. And I remember just being so surprised. Like, what? Like, how? I didn't know that, like 2 little girls being told that they can't do the splits because they're black. What? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Like, part of
Have
me
you
just...
never seen Simone Biles?
I know, right? It's like, I'm sorry.
I know. It was like so crazy to me,
Wow.
right? And I think it's being open enough and feeling safe enough to say, hey, can we talk about that? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I have a lot of emotions right now, and
Wow.
I think just being accepting and understanding that there's going to be bumps, but also not negating what the other person is feeling.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, this, you know, I might come in with a lot of baggage, but say I'm talking to you, like, I really want to know,
Yeah.
you know, what's happened, you know, what do you feel? How, Are
Yeah.
you doing okay, you know? And not coming up and saying, well, you know, I know that you feel this way, but I mean, racism really,
not that bad,
I know it's not that
but-
bad. I
right,
mean,
yeah.
you know, we talk about it, but
Yeah.
okay, I know it's like really, really opening your mind to be like, maybe you don't know everything,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that for me was super eye-opening, you know, like equity. I remember,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you mean by equity? Like, I'm in HR and I didn't know what equity was, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking with our small group over Zoom, and I just said, you know, hey, I don't know what equity is. Like, can someone explain it to me? You
Right.
know?
And what was it explained to you? What was it?
It was great because one of the guys on the call was like, okay, have you seen that image where there's three kids trying to look over a fence? And it was giving them each, you know, the same size box, even though they were different heights.
And that's like equal.
Yeah. He goes, equal. He goes, okay, now you're going to make it so each of the boxes is big enough so that that person can reach
see over.
over.
Can see over.
That's equity.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was
That
like
was
my
awesome.
mind
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
blown. Like, I was just like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know? And so
Yeah.
I think it's just
like
being aware.
Yeah, it's like the idea that some might need a little bit more because of where they're at, you know, and that being equal, that, you know, that's great, but some people might still be at a very, like, might be
Right.
at a disadvantage still,
Yep.
and it's bringing everybody
Up together.
up
Yep.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's just having those conversations. I know people say, you know, you got to lean in, you got to really, but do it with an open heart
Yeah.
and an
Yeah.
open mind, and really be open to the idea that your mind might get blown by what you hear.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
how is that going to
Yeah.
impact you?
Yeah, and like your reality might be different.
Yeah.
You know? And being ready to accept that and being ready to like what's the word? Confront that.
Yeah.
You know? That can be really hard.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Especially, you know, I mean, you know, when people say, you know, I don't see color, like everyone is equal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad that everyone is equal.
But you can see color.
Yeah.
You can see
But
red.
everyone is, yeah,
You can
exactly.
see yellow.
Yeah.
You can see black.
Are
Yeah.
you black?
I am. Oh my gosh.
I know, it's
I'm
funny
actually
'cause
brown, but
I tell people, I'm like, I'm yellow, and they're like, what? And I'm like, that's why I can't wear yellow, because then you can really tell I'm more yellow. You know, I know. But my grandmother, who is Korean, would send me something yellow every
year.
Christmas.
Yeah.
really.
Funny.
Yeah.
My kid would, when he was little, he'd go, I'm brown and you're pink.
Yeah.
That's what he would say to
Yeah.
me. He called me pink all the time. I'm like, I guess I am pink.
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
Yeah.
My dad's pink. I'm like,
Yeah.
I like
And
that.
even though like I don't see color, I think that was a thing that was back in like what, the 60s or something like that, that it was a way to like, oh, we're all, you know, humans and stuff.
Right.
But I think that also kind of, it's also like not okay either,
No.
Yeah.
you know?
No.
It's like, well, then you don't see me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And we all see color. And it's like,
Exactly.
that's fine, you know? Being black isn't a bad thing, you
No.
know? And, but I think that's what that says, like, oh, I don't see color.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel
Right.
like, oh, there's something wrong with me, or like
Yeah.
you don't see
Right,
me,
you don't
know, stuff like
see.
that. Yeah.
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 So
I appreciate that. Well, Jim, we definitely appreciate having you here tonight. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
so much for giving us the time.
Thank you.
I know it's not easy to share. We appreciate your vulnerability.
yeah, thank you.
We really do. We really do appreciate your vulnerability.
I'm just super grateful to have you here, and I hope people get to know a little bit more about you. And yeah,
And thanks for watching. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and hopefully this was as educational for you as it was for me, and for Elodie.
Yeah.
We really appreciate your sharing, so thanks a lot for being with us.
Yep. Thank you so much.
My skin is gold.